Hello, I'm Mr. Richmond with the Department of Plant Sciences. I serve as the Tobacco, Hemp, and Specialty Crops Extension Specialist. I'm going to cover hemp production considerations for fiber, grain, and cannabinoids or floral hemp as a portion of the virtual field day option for the Milan no-till field day. I just wanted to quickly cover some of the changes to Tennessee hemp regulations associated with the Tennessee Department of Ag and the hemp pilot program. Firstly, the TDA is no longer adhering to the 2014 Farm Bill and will be following the 2018 Farm Bill and final rule, which became effective March 2021. As far as Tennessee is concerned, the effective date is January 1st, 2022, and the major change is that 0.3% total THC is now the compliance for THC, which is the summation of THCA and Delta-9 THC. Some other additional rulings associated with this final rule is that the FSA hemp acreage is now required to be reported, as well as some criminal background checks for the license. Of note, there's also potential to remediate non-compliant hemp. And non-compliant hemp would be total THC between 0.3% and less than 1% total THC, which we'll talk more about that in a few slides. So snagged this from a release that I read a few months ago, and it's basically saying what will happen in the future for hemp, and the expectations are that grain and fiber will be the predominant type of hemp that's going to be grown in the U.S. And I think we've already seen that in Tennessee with the CBD acreage already declining quite, I guess, heavily. So a few things of note is that if there are markets that open up for fiber and grain, at least we hope to have some recommendations in place with some of our field research programs that we started this year and last year. As far as the major production systems for hemp, you have fiber, as you can see on the left, grain, as you can see in the middle, and floral. Floral typically follows, as far as the field production, a tobacco transplant model where you have a reduced plant population. And then if you're looking at dual purpose, it is using varieties that are adapted for fiber and grain. And so dual purpose simply means that the varieties would be planted in hopes of harvesting the grain and then the fiber. Some major, or I guess some information about fiber production systems would be that it is considered a field crop, low inputs and lower returns per acre, especially if you consider what was thought to be the original value of hemp, which did not shake out. But the proximity to a processor is very important. Some original estimations stated about 150 miles to the processor would be about the limit for maintaining profitability for shipping your product to the processor. It is direct seeded, just like a grain, and very high plant populations, and of course mechanically harvested. It does include both male and female plants. It's approximately planted at about 40 to 80, probably closer to that 60 to 80 pounds per acre for seed, and you would need to correct for germination. And this higher density planting does promote the vertical growth that results in long, higher quality bast fiber. So the taller plants with a smaller stalk diameter is thought to be desired. And a final plant population targets about 30 to 35 plants per square foot. And harvest is timed for the onset of reproductive growth. It is thought that fiber quality does decrease with time, and it can be difficult on equipment when harvested late. Another factor is retting, and retting is the controlled rotting of the stem to release those bast fibers. And typically you leave the fiber hemp after it's harvested, laying in the field for a period of about 3 to 4 weeks. Here's a picture of baling some retted hemp, and this is a picture from our colleagues up north in Kentucky. But you can see just a normal large-scale baler here with baling the hemp. And so I mentioned bast fibers, and bast is the outermost portion of the fiber hemp. You can see in the picture, and then the hurd would be the innermost portion or the pith of the hemp fiber. The bast fibers are used for more of the ropes, textiles, composites, plastics, whereas the hurd is thought to be more for animal bedding, insulation, composite wood materials, things like hempcrete, paper, and possibly even biofuel. And the picture there on the right is actually one of our planting date studies from 2022. And you can see that in the middle of the picture, that's our second planting date, and then to the right is our first planting date. And we started this in late April. So some of the current research that we have related to fiber is planting date trial, of course, late April to early June. So we actually finished those around the 11th of June. We have about 12 varieties that we're trying from various sources, predominantly from Europe and China. And we're also going to be looking at how long do we need to ret the fiber after it's cut, from between 0 and 28 days. And we're also looking into no tillage versus tillage for growing fiber. As far as grain is concerned, it's thought to be kind of a moderate input, moderate return potential. Again, direct seeded, similar to fiber. Again, larger acreages, including male and female plants. And it's approximately 25 to 40 pounds per acre direct seeded, again, corrected for germination, which can be an issue in hemp. We've noticed that some of the varieties of cultivars that we have tested definitely can have poor germination. Row spacing, of course, is dependent upon the equipment. 7, 15, and 30 are all possible. And one of the things that we have to consider is a faster canopy closure, especially with the lack of herbicides that we have. So that tighter row spacing might be better for anybody that's wanting to try this. Not that there's a market for any grain hemp at the moment. But the final plant population targets about 10 to 15 plants per square foot. And currently for the grain, we have some planting dates where we started in late April and went through late May, as well as some variety evaluations where we have about 4 varieties. I'm going to quickly discuss some dual purpose hemp work that we've been doing here at UT. And here's a couple pictures of those trials from last year. You can see the male and the female plants on that right picture. So the goal with dual purpose hemp is to produce hemp that can be used for fiber and grain products. It is very much in the early stages, especially for Tennessee. And we started this trial back in 2021, and we're going to repeat that in 2022. Here's some of the cultivars that we tested in 2021. Some of these are going to be tested in 2022, but not all of them. And this includes a list from or sources of varieties from Canada, from the U.S., and also from various states like Colorado, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. One of the things that we wanted to test essentially was how much seed shatter that we're trying to get indirectly, or that we are getting indirectly. And so we decided to hand harvest and machine harvest with combine. And we got some pretty interesting results with doing that. And for the dry grain yield, now this is in pounds per acre, so our yields were terrible, but we did plant late in the season last year. But if you're looking at this table, the varieties go down the table, and you can see them on the left from all paired to X59. And then you can see the hand harvested yield and the machine harvested. Now, you quickly notice that that the higher yielding cultivars are both evident in the hand and machine, but the yields comparing the hand to machine harvest are quite different. And that's something that that I didn't necessarily expect, but after we harvested this, now there's a lot of weed seed too. In the hand harvest, we were able to eliminate that. In the machine harvest, we had to clean the seed afterward. But there also could have been some seed shatter that the airflow on the combine just pushed it through, versus actual, the actual yield like we see on the hand harvest. As far as fiber yields, this is also in pounds per acre instead of tons per acre, so we are quite low. Again, I think that that's predominantly due to the planting date, which we're hoping to get around this year because we seeded this trial in early May this time. All right, so I'm going to quickly summarize some of the research for the floral hemp or the cannabinoids. And we're finishing up this year a nitrogen by variety trial. And as you can see, this kind of follows the tobacco transplant model. These are hand planted though. We used 2 cultivars, cherry, lime, and sweetened, and we planted those by hand on 6-foot centers back in late June of 2021. This year we're in early June, or May, actually late May. And then we imposed various nitrogen fertility treatments, all using urea from rates of nitrogen per acre from 0 to 200. We did manually apply this and immediately incorporate it. Interestingly enough, we did not see a response to nitrogen rate. Now this is showing averaged over variety, but we're around 12–13% across the board. So we really didn't have an impact on CBD accumulation for as far as the percentage goes across these treatments. And we didn't see much change between cherry wine and sweetened. And I just wanted to show this picture to show you how we harvested this floral hemp. And essentially we took a knife or a hatchet and cut the plants off at the base and then spiked or speared those onto sticks and cured it in tobacco bark. And so you can kind of see that process right there in the picture. As far as total THC goes, now, firstly, I want to say that this was conducted in 2021 under the 2014 Farm Bill. So it was actually Delta 9 total, or Delta 9 THC, total THC. But something interesting happened. We did have a significant difference between sweetened and cherry wine. But as far as the rate of nitrogen, we didn't see any difference. Now, all of these that you see pictured are above current regular, I guess, laws for total THC. As you can see, that red line depicts 0.3. So I mentioned potential for remediation, and we tried to remediate these samples by homogenizing or mixing the whole plant from the sample. Those samples, the data that I just showed, came from the actual official sample, which is the main COA or the main branch, the upper 6 inches, and that's sent off. So we went back in and basically ran the whole plant through a thresher, which you can see there in the picture, and we mixed that up and sent that back off for sample. And so at harvest, you see the blue bars across in each rate. And after curing and homogenized samples is the orange bar. And so we did not successfully remediate any of these samples. And actually, yeah, there's just no remediation there. So what I would say for anybody that still is trying to grow some hemp in Tennessee, to make sure you're sampling to determine your harvest date, not just harvesting when you feel like it's ready. But I would go ahead and sample so you don't exceed that compliance level. So essentially, we were not successful in remediating hot hemp in 2021. We're going to try to do something similar this year. So hopefully in the future, we'll have some more information. Now, as far as total CBD, we did remediate that, unfortunately, which CBD is the perceived valuable part of the plant as far as the product goes. And after we remediated, on average, we lost about 2% or so of the total CBD. And as far as yield, pounds per plant, we did have some differences between cherry wine and sweetened, but no real response to nitrogen in terms of yield, but between the two varieties, or with rates in the two varieties. This also was representative of some data that was previously collected in 2019 at 2 locations where similar results were shown. Lastly, I just wanted to bring up that there are a few extension publications available, and that would be the W916, W1081, which is a dual purpose hemp, as well as some variety trial information from 19 and 2020. With that, I'll leave my contact information up for anybody that has some questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to take any of those questions. Thank you.